Ironically, the only place I've ever worked where technical debt was well understood was at a bank. When you start using OKRs, you get them right, you get them wrong. This might be controversial, but story points and velocity don't really help me understand how quickly we're delivering the whole thing, right? People are always the most challenging thing, aren't they?
Hello, everyone. Today we're talking with Greg, a VP of Engineering at Flo Health. Hello, Greg.
Hi there, Vladimir. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you very much. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I joined Flo Health about 2.5 years ago as a VP of engineering. I started with one stream, which was the health stream, as we call it, and then they added user-centric and experts to it as well. So essentially, my teams look after, if you've used the app, everything that's inside the app outside of signing up and going through an onboarding journey, more or less. So logging your symptoms, logging your cycle, generating insights, providing you with content, tutorials. There's even like a community kind of section, ask me anything kind of events as well. So yeah, everything that unlocks value for our users.
Can you tell us about the Flo Health itself? So what's the app about?
Yes, of course. So we are the #1 women's health app in the world, the App Store and on the Google Play Store, as I understand it. We have roughly 65 million monthly active users. I don't know how many 100 millions of installs now. And yeah, it's been a journey of 8 years for the founders, starting off just as a period tracker. But over time, we sort of changed our mission to empower and educate every woman and every girl in the world to live a better and healthier lifestyle.
Okay, that sounds like a great mission. And 65 million monthly users sounds impressive as well.
Yes, this is sort of quite a large scale, isn't it? And it is a fantastic mission. In the past, I worked in financial services and e-commerce. I mean, my previous job was with Pizza Hut. So when I joined Flow, somebody said to me, wow, you've gone from pizzas to periods. That's probably like one of the biggest leaps you can do. And yes, it is. It was a complete change. Also going from, as I said, e-commerce to sort of health tech is a big step. But I also wanted to do something with purpose and meaning. For years I'd delivered value and unlocked revenue for many businesses, banks, and big corporations. And I really wanted to apply my skills to something that would make a difference.
So your title is VP of Engineering, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what does it mean? Like, how many people do you have? What is your responsibility?
So yes, how many people? I would say roughly 70 to 80 people sit under me, I believe. Got 5 different teams. And the teams are sort of cross-functional. So you've got front-end, back-end, QA from an engineering perspective. There's an engineering manager as well. And then alongside that, we have obviously product managers, designers, UX, as well as sometimes also content creators, etc. So pretty decent sized teams. They're all supported with privacy, medical, and risk as well. As you may know, as I said, we're in the health space, but not a medical device. So we do need to make sure that we follow certain rules to not stray into that space. As for my role, well, the VP of engineering, we like to say at Flow that, at every level, we have a certain degree of ownership and autonomy. And so act as like the mini CTO for my stream in the same way that my engineering managers act as the mini CTO for their team. So we look after delivering against our company goals. That's in a nutshell what we do. And, in order to do that, we try and build a strong engineering culture, one of, continuous improvement and excellence. And the other thing that I was thinking is super important as a leader is to basically continuously set context. So, look at the company goals, look at the initiatives that we're driving, translate those to what we're doing at our stream, at our team, and for our individually as well, and how you can contribute to that.
So you have like roughly 70 to 80 people, right? So that's quite a lot. And who are reporting directly to you? Is it like managers, engineering managers?
So it's a combination of, so I have engineering managers, yes. I've also got one director of engineering who has engineering managers reported to him. So manager of managers and managers, yes. It's an interesting distinction, right? Because, managers typically manage ICs, right? But then when you start having managers of managers, which is what I do, but having a director, he's doing that as well. So I have a manager of managers of managers.
And you're reporting to a CTO, to a CEO?
CTO.
Okay, nice. Now it's at least clear, because here at Bolt, what we have the same, like we have individual contributors, then engineering managers, then senior engineering managers, that would be director of engineering in your case.
Yep.
Then we would have an actual director of engineering. This is like for an organization like roughly your size, like 70 people, around 70 like, engineers. And then there will be a VP of engineering, who is like a single person in the company. And you have several ones, right?
Yes, there's multiple streams at Flo. So I mentioned that, I look after sort of value creation, we call it. And then we have another VP who looks after value capturing. So this is the area where users onboard and also convert to subscribing customers. And then we have a third sort of stream, if you want, which is sort of we call it delivery, but it's basically comprised of enabling teams. So think of there's a velocity team in there, which is our infrastructure team. There's a data platform team, and they look after our sort of data lake and tooling around that. And then there's a third component there around experimentation. And then there's a fourth sort of structure, which doesn't have a VP per se. It's got a head of, but it's sort of a data science, MarTech, engagement tech area.
Okay, got it. So you have basically like several VPs, like 3 or 4, and then there's a CTO, and you're reporting to them. Okay, how this like communication looks like between you and the CTO? Like, do you align on the goals or on the projects, or like how it looks like for you?
I guess it depends on certain dimensions here, right? Certainly the CTO and I have a one-to-one every couple of weeks where we go over, individual things for the stream and myself and maybe the team. We also have like a weekly forum where all the engineering leaders get together, and each week is a different kind of theme. So sometimes it will be people across the organization, sometimes it's budget related. So those are the kind of conversations that we have at the engineering level. There's also one where we talk about cross-company initiatives and how we're going to tackle those. And then from a customer perspective, we sort of practice continuous planning. But every quarter or so, we do get together to look at some of the major initiatives that we're trying to achieve. And so we have OKRs that sort of give us the direction in which we're traveling, and then we look at how we can meet those objectives and key results with the kind of initiatives that we need to drive. And some fit nicely into just a single team. But as we grow and our ideas become more and more complex, they do grow across multiple teams at times.
So you mentioned OKRs. So basically, you receive some from the CTO. How would a typical OKR would look like? Like not necessarily with the precise numbers, but just the idea.
So the C-level, so CTO, CEO, CFO, CMO, all of our C people get together and try and set the direction of travel for the company. When you start using OKRs, you get them right, you get them wrong. They're a bit of a hodgepodge of key results being objectives and objectives being key results. But over the years, we've gotten much, much better, and we typically align on 3 objectives that are aspirational. Depending on the objective itself, there's 3 to 4, sometimes 5 key results that we're trying to hit.
Can you give me an example of like how it would look like? How the like an example of an objective, and then how it maps to the key results?
So this is hypothetical. This is not a real one. But so imagine, our objective is to be the #1 health app for women in all the app stores globally. And then you would try and come up with some key results that would allow you to move in that direction. So the natural, one that most people gravitate to is, increase market share by, X percentage, right? And then there could be another sort of really growth-driven feedback loop that you're trying to introduce. What we also try and do, because we're mindful of the health of the system that we're building, is also have things like, make sure that the app is localized for the top 20 markets that we have. So this means that we focus on also improving our localization strategy and our implementation of localization features and tooling. There could be ones around performance as well. So I don't know, improve the load time of an app, for example, because that would increase your app rating, So there's some sort of, growth-based ones, and then some sort of ones that allow you to balance things out and still improve the experience of the app holistically.
When you're saying about performance improvements or the startup, it sounds like a performance tactic that you're trying to employ to actually achieve a goal of increasing the rating of the application in the store, right?
Mhm.
So it's more like objective is to be the number one, then the key result is like increase market share and then increase the rating, right? And then localize, because it also contributes to rating. And then the tactic, and then this key result of increasing the rating becomes an objective for the downstream team, and the tactic or the key result that they're employing will be to improve the startup time, because it will contribute to their objective, right? Is it how the cascading works?
Yes, broadly it is. Though you've already sort of spotted one small fallacy there, that sometimes you do have very concrete implementation details of how we go after a certain objective. But broadly, yes, this is how we try and organize ourselves. So this is how the company sets the objectives for the overall business, and then all teams try and contribute to that by identifying the key results or set of objectives or set of key results they want to influence, and then build their own.
Okay. Does it work only for like C-level speaking to the VPs, or it's like goes throughout the whole company?
It goes throughout the whole company. So as I mentioned, we try to do continuous planning, but these key results get updated and reviewed quarterly to give updates, and then they change maybe every half year. So as a result, then teams will start adapting their roadmaps and their plans accordingly every quarter, every half year, to try and influence the key results and objectives that we have.
Okay. Typical caveat with the OKRs is that managers start connecting the performance review and bonuses, if you have any, to the completion of key results in OKRs. Do you do that?
I mean, it's a loaded question there a little bit. So key results and objectives, or OKRs, they're meant to be really difficult to reach, right? So I would say that if we get to about 80%, 90% completion of our OKRs, we've done well. And I think in the beginning, we would be doing like 100% completion, but it was more output kind of based rather than outcome driven as well. So since we've moved the needle and made them really aspirational and stretch, we don't complete them regularly. You still get assessed and measured based off of that, right? So how far along did you go? How much did you contribute? These are still commitments that we're making to the business, right? So we are accountable. I am accountable. My engineering managers are accountable. Our product managers are accountable. But the teams also have an accountability to meet those goals, and it is one factor of their performance review.
So it's kind of, you would write the feedback, hey, like your performance review is not often excellent, but rather meets expectations because the key result was achieved like 70% instead of 90%.
Well, no, it's not just because of the key results. So let's be very clear about that, right? So it's one of the dimensions. So delivery is a hugely important thing as a growing business, and it's it factors into a degree. But then there is also how efficient was the team, how accurate was the team in delivering against its commitments, how predictable was it. You also have sort of, from an EM perspective, metrics like how has your team grown. We had a commitment to promote one engineer a quarter or something like that. Have you achieved that as well? So there's a number of different commitments that teams make that factor into their individual and collective performance, not just you've completed your OKR, well done.
Okay. What I think of right now is the Goodhart's law. Is basically, if you have the OKR, you can try to achieve it no matter what, even at the expense of the future growth. Mm-hmm. So just achieve it no matter what. How would you balance it? Like, for example, what comes to my mind? Let's say we want to work on this performance improvement for the startup time, right? So what we can actually do is that we can make it load like really fast, but then do all the heavy lifting later. So like we will show the first screen, for example, as an image, right? But don't make it interactive for another 10 seconds. So you will achieve a very good improvement in one metric, but you actually will screw over all the other ones. So how to balance this?
Well, I mean, so this is what I was trying to explain earlier, and maybe I got it wrong, but your objectives are aspirational, and your key results are what you measure against, right? Your progress, and you typically have a mixture of growth. So if you think of system design, right, every system is comprised of feedback loops. There's balancing feedback loop and there's growth feedback loops. It's the same thing with OKRs in my mind. You have growth incentives and balancing incentives. So to address that, you should commit to the objective and not just the key result, right? If you just choose a key result that's a growth-based one, yes, that's what happens when you do that, right? You're gaming the system and you're going to deplete the system. So you need to choose the objective, and you need to move the needle on all of the key results that are there, so that you have a
okay. So it means that the idea how you structure the OKRs means that you should account for this idea of growth and balancing. Otherwise, you're just screwing your teams and leading them in the wrong direction.
Well, you're screwing the system, right? So
yeah.
So I mean, I'm sure you've worked in environments as well, in startups or even in large companies, right, where growth, right? Ignore technical debt, just keep going, just add more and more, and then before you know it, it's every change you want to make takes 6 months to a year, and your product manager, your CPO, your CTO are all screaming. The CEO is upset because it just takes too long to do anything. True. And you go, well, that's because we abuse the system, right?
Yeah, happens too frequently, like more frequently than you would want it to be.
Ironically, the only place I've ever worked where technical debt was well understood was at a bank.
Really? Okay.
Clearly, they understand the value of interest and how bad negative interest can accrue and really, really affect you. So that's the one place where I worked, at one bank in particular, where they really got it, and they did not want to have the debt get too high, and so they were always diligently paying debt.
That's a great insight. Like I'm making a short clip out of it, definitely. Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting observation, that the people who are understanding the interest will understand the interest on tech debt as well. Yeah. Okay, great. Let's talk about your communication with your reports, right? Mm-hmm. So, like for me, a life of a software engineer is pretty straightforward, right? You have some tasks, you need to like figure out how to make them generally, right? Then you write some code, you deploy, you write some design docs, bam, you're great. For engineering managers, it's like leading the team, like knowing what are the objectives that you need to achieve as a team, and then picking up the projects that will help to achieve those objectives, right? So it's like kind of picking up the projects and distributing them and helping your peers achieving this. However, when we're talking about VP of engineering, right, it's like a couple of levels above. What do you do? Like, what is your typical conversation with an engineering manager reporting to, or with a director of engineering?
So I think there's two sort of typical conversations that I have. One is sort of more operational, and then one is, career-led for the individual, right? So try not to conflate the two conversations that we're having. So the operational one is, how are things going from a delivery perspective, right? So that's quite clear. And then the other is sort of from a professional growth kind of perspective. And, those, is there one you want to focus on first?
Let's start with the operational one. So how it looks like.
So, again, when we have to hold ourselves accountable, right? So we have to be very explicit in our expectations. And so when we set out our expectations, we set out our goals quite regularly, and then we talk about those and we review those. And sort of, these are mainly, quantitative, because we can look at metrics, right? We can look at burn down charts. We can use tools like Jellyfish and Little's Law to understand how things are progressing. We can look at those things to understand how the team is doing as well. I'll be quick to say that there's no one metric that we focus on only. So we do pick a spread of them. And typically that's based on the conversations that we've had and the analysis that we've done in areas that we think improvement needs to happen.
So you track both the delivery, like how the current projects are delivered, and I bet you're doing this with the burn down charts or with milestones, not sure. And then you want to track the health of the team. Is that correct?
Yeah. So yeah, there's two dimensions there as well. So burn down is one thing, but this might be controversial, but story points and velocity don't really help me understand how quickly we're delivering the whole thing, right? So any kind of feature or initiative is rather complex and goes over multiple sprints. So I think to understand exactly where you are in terms of what you're trying to deliver, it's more important to look at the lead time of a unit of work in the system. So from the moment it gets moved from a user story to something that's in design to in review for dev, and then in dev, and then in test and released, right? So that's far more important to understand and measure than I've delivered X over my cycle
Okay.
1 or 2. That's an important measure, don't get me wrong. We need to improve those as well. But I think from my perspective, right, it's sort of how long does it take to go from A to delivery, right?
Okay, so you look at this thing and you're trying to improve this lead time?
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you measure it? Is it like something that you do in Jira, or there are some other tools, or it's like time tracked by the engineers, or how it works?
So, I mean, this is typical in many organizations where I join, where most people can't articulate how they go from idea to something that's running in production, right? So one of the first things that you need to do is sort of a path to production exercise. And then you sort of see all the different kind of roles that exist in the organization, explicit ones and implicit ones, hidden ones sometimes as well, or, responsibilities that somebody's doing because there is no role to do that. And then once you look at that, you can sort of map it all out, and then you can set up your Jira board to reflect that. At its simplest, most companies have, a backlog, then there's a in design, in dev, in QA, and ready for release or something, right? And then released.
Okay, so what you want to achieve is to map the value stream steps into the columns in the Jira board.
Yeah, and then you can measure the entire lifetime of a piece of work, and then you can identify where the bottlenecks are, or the inefficiencies are that work specifically in that space. Sometimes it's outside of engineering, sometimes it's inside of engineering, and that's when you start looking for improvements. But I think it's key to look at every unit of work, and that unit of work could be a story, it could be an epic, it could be a theme, whatever you call it. You measure those and you track those, and then if you want to then predict as well, you can look at the historical cadence of the team, right? How many things does it ship over the space of a month, a quarter, a half a year, or a year? And then you can start forecasting out, and you can kind of go, hey, it looks like you're going to be behind, should we have a conversation about that? And then tools like Jellyfish come in, and then you can look at those with the resource planners, for example, and you can see things like, oh, look, we say that there's 10 engineers working on this, but for this particular feature, you can see it sort of zigzagging up and down. Sometimes it's 8 of them, sometimes it's 4, and then you can sort of see where they're being distracted, for example. Yeah, it's not that they're bad engineers, right? That's not the point. They might be asked to do other work, or they're on holiday, or, they're doing a lot of analysis or something. But it's important to know what is happening in your system so that you can have a conversation about it and then look for improvements.
Yeah, what I wanted to ask is that, so basically what you're saying is that the measurements that you're taking are not the conclusions, but rather signals. And if you see that something goes wrong, then you need to take a look and understand what's happening there.
Yes, and I coach my EMs and directors to look for these signals, right? And not just, focus on building wonderful spreadsheets that have, story points to velocity and that kind of stuff measurements. Our tooling is quite sophisticated these days to do that kind of analysis.
Okay. Yeah, another question I had was, how do you find the bottleneck? So imagine you have this Jira board, right? And there are like, 20 things in backlog, then 3 in design, 5 in development. 7 in testing and 2 in production, like for this quarter. How do you make a conclusion? Like, where's the bottleneck?
I mean, that really depends. I can tell you a story if you want of an example.
Sure, I love stories.
But that's just an example, right? I remember I was a consultant for a while, and I was asked to come in and help this team be more effective, and the classic: deliver more, deliver faster, right? And so we rocked up at the client side, and this is in a day where, yes, there was Jira, but mainly physical boards were the thing that teams used. And actually, I'm a huge fan of physical boards. They make things so visual. Anyway, so we walk in, and we have a conversation, and they chat about what their goals and their ambitions are, and we ask a bunch of questions, and then we say, okay, well, thank you, let's go and meet the team. And so we walk out to meet the team, and their board is there, and in QA there was this mass of cards, this thick as well, of cards stacked on top of each other. And you're like, what's going on here? And they went, we can't ship anything to production. So, okay, well, why not? The environment's not ready. So, okay, so you want teams to move faster and deliver more value and ship to production, but you don't have a production environment.
Yeah. That's a classical story. Like when you open the book, this The Goal by Eliyahu Goldratt, this is exactly what you see, right? So there is actually a huge bottleneck and a huge stopper in your value creation stream, and the only conclusion that you need to make is that stop every work before this bottleneck is actually opened up. Otherwise, you're just piling up some stuff that will be a liability a little bit later, and you will be paying like a huge interest on this one. So
huge risk, and stuff will not work, right? I mean, people sort of say, how do we become better and more secure and more reliable? And it's like, well, just ship more stuff in smaller increments, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if you can't ship, like, solve this problem immediately.
Exactly, right? So, and I think this is another reason why, for example, I'm a huge fan of WIP limits as well, right? Because they sort of give you an idea that, okay, we're butting up against something here. Let's talk about it. Do we swarm to address it? Do we analyze what's going on and maybe make a small change in our system to improve it? Kaizen and continuous improvement, they're synonymous with agility, right? But we all too often forget about those, and that to me, such an anti-pattern. We really should be making continuous adjustments all the time to our system. Small improvements, marginal gain theory, all these kind of things are super powerful.
That's a shame. This is partly why I'm running this podcast, right? So I'm talking to people, first of all, to know something else myself, but also to let people know how the things are working in the industry and how particular techniques like WIP limits or this finding the bottlenecks or coaching people and all that stuff works, so that the industry may be a little bit a better place than it was before.
And there's also, I've changed jobs a few times in my career now. I mean, I've been doing this for 30 odd years. And every place that you go to is very similar in the issues and aspirations. Let's do more quickly, more reliably, more dependably, more predictably. And you before long you realize that the problems are very, very similar, slightly different contexts. Maybe small things are different around the edges, but it's very similar in every.
Yeah, true. So the value stream in software development is like actually the same pretty much everywhere, right? You have some business folks coming to you with some business ideas, and they need you to design it. And when you agreed on the design and scope, you need to write some code. Then you ship it and monitor in production. That's your value stream, full stop.
Yeah. So where does it go wrong, right? The sense of
exactly where it goes wrong the most, so that you can pay attention to one single thing and improve it. And once you solved it, there's the next thing, and so on and so on. And this is what actually continuous improvement is, right? So all the time you're growing and so on. Yeah, that's great. Like the biggest disappointment for me is when like you're steering the engineering organization, and then you see that your actual bottleneck is not in the engineering, it's like more or less all right everywhere, but
Mm.
you're stuck on the product management input. And this is precisely the situation I'm in right now. So I have like 10 projects on my hands, but I cannot advance any of it because I need some product input. And yeah, that's a little disappointing, but still okay.
Again, that's not an uncommon problem, right? And I think the key thing here is to let people know that actually it's one team, one dream, right? Or we only win as a team, and that we're all working together in this to make things better, right? And when bottlenecks appear, it's another one of these values is a blameless kind of root cause analysis of what's happening, whether it's through postmortems or through ways of working or processes, right? It's not a reflection on the individual or the function if things aren't going well. I think you really need to take that away from the individual and look at it more holistically and try and explain that we want to make this system as a whole more effective. And the more effective and efficient we are, the more successful we are, right? And then the more successful we are, the more, I don't know, pay rises, promotions, bonuses, whatever thing motivates you get, right? Or maybe just the satisfaction of having done a job well. But yeah, it's really about breaking down those barriers, whether that's product, QA, ops, medical, risk in my case, legal. We're all trying to do the right thing by our users, and we just have to have the empathy to find the solutions for that.
Yeah, true. Okay, what is the most challenging thing in your role right now?
People are always the most challenging thing, aren't they?
Okay. Yeah, technology is perfect. People are.
Well, it's so simple, right? No, I mean, look, most challenging. It's definitely a combination of continuing to grow the business as a whole, right? So whether that's from a revenue perspective or from a company perspective itself, every year we aspire to deliver more value for our users, which means we need to grow the business in terms of people. So hiring is always a challenge, finding the right people is a challenge, and then you have these commitments to deliver as well. So balancing all those things out is really challenging. And so when I say people, yeah, it's a holistic thing. It's not individuals who are performing badly or anything like that. It's more like, how do you structure your teams and your streams to grow and evolve against the commitments that we're making, especially in the world of constraints as well, right? It's not the free-flowing noughties where there's tons of money available and you can just throw money at the problem. There's also at the same time more talent, and it's much harder to hire all that talent that's out there, given the unfortunate sort of cutbacks that have happened in the industry over the last couple of years. So it's challenging to grow a business and to grow it well and to continue delivering against your commitments.
Okay, thank you for this. Let's get back to the conversations that you're having with engineering managers. So the one thing that we covered is operational management. Another one was the career opportunities, career growth. So what are the questions that engineering managers ask their VP?
How do I become a VP?
Okay.
Or how do I become a director? I mean, I think you get there's many types of people, but if you look at people that know what they want from their career, right, and are very organized and very driven, and you guide and coach and mentor those folks and enable them, really. That's sort of type A, if you want. I'm sorry, I'm generalizing quite a bit here, but I don't mean this in a negative way. And then there's type B, which is folks who are a bit more, I'm just doing what I'm doing, and somehow ended up here as an engineering manager. I seem to be good with people, I'm good with tech, but yeah, I don't know, and so, those are much harder to coach, right? And I also firmly believe that ultimately your career is, it's yours, right? So you have a duty to yourself and responsibility to yourself to manage that. I can't manage your career for you. I can't create your career for you.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
So, and I do try in some cases, and then, and then there's always like the coaching versus sort of leading kind of mentality as well, which, when you coach people to a solution, they tend to learn it better and recognize the pattern better and then adapt that solution to multiple different kind of problems. Whereas if you just tell people what the solution is, it's a bit different. And in some cases, you can, you want me to tell you what you could do, and then you work through that, and if people engage with it, and then you can go back into coaching and growing people. And some people don't engage with that either, right? That happens for engineering managers with ICs as well, I imagine, right? You at some stage go, okay, well, what do you want to get from your one-to-one, right? This is your time, with me. How do you want to spend it? But otherwise, I can talk to you operationally about stuff all day long.
That's true as well. So, when you come to one-to-one, be sure that your manager will always find the questions to ask. But it's your responsibility to ask your questions about yourself and about your career, right? Because it's your responsibility, as you said it.
Yeah.
So, definitely.
But I do encourage people as well, who sometimes might not know or struggle with this notion of coming up with their own questions. It's an expectation setting, right? Hey, this is your time with me. I would expect you to come prepared with some stuff, right? Whether, as I said, depending on what the type of meeting is, and if that doesn't work, okay, well, do you want help in this space? I can give you some advice. Here's some things you could read. Here's some things you could think about. And then, we'll see how that goes in the next session. And, and then you can, at some stage, I don't know how often you have your one-to-ones, right? Some people have them weekly, some fortnightly, sometimes monthly, right? I think, again, depending on maturity and involvement, engagement with your career, that's where you sort of find these sort of sweet spots and timings as well.
Yeah, true. What would you advise to people, like how to prepare to their one-to-one so they can come and say, like, hey, I want to grow? Like, what do I do? Like, what's the preparation should be, or what are the questions you would be asking in order to help the person?
I mean, fantastic. You want to grow, but what, what and where and how? What area do you want to grow into, right? And from there, it can go in many kind of directions. I think some of the things that I hear most frequently is, how can I be more strategic in my thinking, in my planning, in my work?
Do people really ask this?
Yeah, I get that quite often.
Okay. That's a good sign, because typically what we see in our organization is that people lack this strategic thinking, and they don't even ask like how I can be more strategic. So we need to push it back, saying like, hey, you need to be more strategic. You need to think about like the things that will be happening next year already.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and then we have this culture of sort of servant leader, and so it's how can I be a better leader? How can I serve my team better? How can I be more effective in those kind of areas of growing my team? And sometimes we talk by example of what's happening on the team as well. It really varies. It really depends on the topic, but it's sort of typically say, I want to do this. So okay, well, have you considered these things? Have you tried these things? And what hasn't worked, what has worked? Okay, what are the next steps then that you want to sort of try out, right? So it's a typical kind of coaching techniques here to sort of guide the person to the right kind of outcome, and then obviously check back in to make sure that they're supported and keep sort of evaluating the things that they're trying and what works and doesn't work, and what they want to do next, and what goals they're setting themselves as a result.
So does it mean that people need to understand, first of all, what they actually want to achieve? Or you can help them figuring it out?
Sometimes, yeah. It's actually sometimes when you talk to people about a particular goal, that they have, you actually realize that what they're asking for is not really what they want, really. And so you then kind of go, well, have you considered doing this instead? And it's like, oh, I was so dead set on being more strategic that I realized that I have got terrible communication style and I want to work on the communication style, right? I thought I was strategic, but I couldn't get my strategy across ever. Yeah, that's because your communication style is totally
communication is not there. So you can't convince anybody. Actually, your strategy is right.
Yeah, again, it's a bit contrived, but what I mean is the same thing. It's like sometimes you focus on something so much that you're actually missing that there's a missing step in between, or it's adjacent adjacent or it's actually completely different. And again, that's where leaders kind of come in and coaches come in, right? I think as another string to your bow as a manager, and I really don't like that term, as you're a leader, right? And as you're a coach, right? You're there to coach people and help them be the best version of themselves that they can be, and definitely avoid telling them how to do things, because it's necessary sometimes, but on the whole it's less effective in terms of the individual's growth and what they learn and what they take from it.
Yeah, that's very true, because when you tell them what to do, they don't have this sense of ownership, right? So this should be coming from them so that they can commit it to it. Yeah.
There's a sense of ownership, yes, for sure. And then, will they drive it through to the right kind of level? But also, you haven't really thought about the problem or the solution, to the problem, right? And so if you find yourself in a similar situation, will you be able to apply that solution modified slightly? Probably not, or maybe just. So I think coaching really allows you to have that flexibility to identify patterns rather than just hard solutions that you work with. And again, as you grow more senior, it's not just writing code that is super fast and most efficient way of writing some kind of algorithm. It's much more abstract, right? It's more pattern based, and so trying to build a model of the world that's going to rely on if else then is really hard. And so you need to be more abstract.
Yeah, true. So my understanding is that true senior engineering manager, like whatever the title is, right, should know the technology, should know the people management, and be able to be a coach at the same time. So that sounds quite challenging to me.
It is quite challenging, and I mean, there was a great book by Pat Qua, right? When you went from like individual contributor to tech lead, right? There's already a difference there. And then when you go from tech lead to a more pure management kind of role as well, as a change. And look, to be excellent at all three, technology, coaching, business, all of these various kind of facets of your job are, it's almost impossible, right? I'm sure there's people out there that can do it, and they're much better than me, and good on them. But I think you focus on certain areas at certain times to get better, and then after a while you go look at another area and get better, or reacquaint yourself with something. I mean, I used to love writing code, and I haven't written production code in 5 or 6 years now, and dear God, I should not be allowed to write production code these days. But I still like to crack open the editor and play around with Copilot and Rust these days, just to sort of to stay somewhat relevant and interested and curious, and have conversations with people. You do need to have the respect of engineers when it comes to technology, but you have to also explain that look, I'm no longer the engineer that I was, so, but I still understand what you're talking about, and I can put it into context of what we're trying to achieve, and I can then give you the right context as well of how you contribute to that mission.
Yeah, exactly. Context is the key. Okay, what are your expectations of engineers? So do you think they should be just focused on the code or something else?
No, I mean, simply put, I would say they're there to deliver value for our users, right? If you deliver value for our users, you're building features, you're unlocking revenue, you're unlocking your own personal growth and success. So that's sort of like the sort of top rule, if you want. Consistently and predictably unlock customer value, because it has a lot of other stuff underneath of it. But there's other things as well, like we have core values. I do expect them to follow these core values and believe in them, because they not only set out what we're doing and why, but also how, right? So for example, I may have mentioned this already, but one of our core values is we only win as a team, right? So collaboration is a key thing, and then if we all pull together in the same direction, then we are stronger. And the other ones that we have are we live our mission, we're open and honest, and we're always open and curious, right? So these are strong values that are actually quite meaningful to an engineer as well, right? Curiosity is a key thing, right? When you're building things, you always want to learn new tricks, new techniques, new technologies, just new ways of solving things, and playing as a team and collaborating. Something like, as an engineer, when I joined, I started coding because I didn't really want to interact with people. Boy, was I wrong, right? It's basically all you do as a software engineer is talking to other people and working with people to get results out there.
Yeah. The coding is the easiest part, right? Like
Yes,
talking
exactly.
to people and understanding what actually needs to be built is more complex.
Yeah, my fundamental assumption around why to get into programming was totally wrong.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But and now I look after people more than anything else, right? So again, sorry, just to get back to your question. So deliver value consistently, predictably, follow our core values. The other thing as well is I'm a big fan of ownership at all levels. So really encouraging people, whether they're managers or individual contributors, to own areas, identify issues, go find a solution, go deliver that solution, because ultimately you are closest to the problem and you will know best how to solve it as well.
Okay, so you expect a high level of autonomy and engaging in the business itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Engage with metrics, not just engineering metrics, but engage with business metrics, right? Understand, I don't know, conversion rates or retention rates, whatever metrics your teams are after, right?
How do you bring engineers to the state when they're like interested not in just lines of code or performance issues, but rather in business and how the whole thing works in general?
I think there's different ways of doing that. One of the ones that I found quite effective, and this is something that I actually only picked up in my last year with Pizza Hut, was sort of gamification of some of the metrics. So at Pizza Hut, selling pizzas is a big deal. Sorry, ambulance going through. And so focusing on sales metrics was a big thing. And so Friday nights, people would be on there and say, are we going to get past a £1 million night or $1 million night? And so there was an engagement there. And if it dropped off, what was the conversion rate? So people started broadly looking at all sorts of different metrics. And some engineers even went so far as finding optimizations for the purchasing flow, right? So I remember one of our front-end engineers sort of implemented the sort of one-click pizza ordering by just sort of going, I click on the thing, select my base, select my toppings, etc. What if I just defaulted to whatever the current the majority of people order, right? So thin crust margarita, and huge impact. He just did a little bit of engaged the data a little bit, did a little bit of research into what was popular, and then built like a solution, rolled it out as an experiment, let it run for I think 7 days, because that's sort of the life cycle for pizza there. And we saw some incredible metrics. But hey, we should roll this out, or we should improve it in a few other ways, run some more experiments.
That's a great engagement for an engineer.
Yeah,
like really understanding the domain and the problem area.
Yeah. And I think that's, when you join a business, no matter what it is, right, you should engage with the business itself, right? If it's king, if it's delivery, right? If it's a ride share, if whatever it is, really engage with it, understand, also understand maybe what the user experience is, right? So in your case, you said you were Bolt, right? So it might be, it's not just people that ride in the cars, right? But maybe what the drivers that are providing the services, right? Have you ever done a shift of, driving people around town, something like that, where you get a completely different perspective on who the users of your business are?
Yeah, we actually have a program like Be a Driver, and you can sign up and be a driver for a day, and you can even pocket the profit. But fantastic. Yeah, that's like an invaluable experience of understanding like part of your users, at least, like what's
we had to go work in a pizza shop once a year. We had to make pizzas. We didn't get to deliver, but we got the experience of
okay. That's nice.
It's super hard work, right? And when the system is either too efficient, when you just get overwhelmed with really complex pizza orders and stuff, it's just gives you a very different perspective of what people experience as a result of what you're building.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, I have a last question for today, and it's about like what would be the basis to fire an engineer?
Well, so I think it's pretty much the same thing everywhere that you go, that you're at, right? And I guess at its simplest, it's not performing against the expectations set out in the role or following company policies. Those would be the reasons for letting somebody go. Now,
Do you have an example, like at the current place that you had to let go an engineer?
well, I mean, not actually, oddly enough, not yet, but I'll take that as a good thing. But we clearly set out our expectations in our career framework. When you're going through your onboarding journey, you have to read through all of these documents and these policy documents as well quite extensively. And it's like, we call it like the 90-day plan. And as you're onboarding, you check in with your manager and your buddy around those kind of areas. And so you get a good sense for what is expected of you from a policy perspective and from a role perspective. And then these responsibilities and expectations and roles, they're reviewed twice a year, sort of officially, I'll say, because we have like two review cycles. And then we also have quarterly check-ins where you get feedback from your team, from your peers as well. So you have multiple touch points to understand how you're performing against those expectations. And when you're not consistently performing against those expectations, then the conversations get a bit more directed, right? So here are the areas that we see market improvement that's needed from you, and typically that results.
So it's not a single cycle, it's like a couple or 3 cycles in a row that you see no improvements in problematic areas.
So I'll say, if you have, so let's say first check-in is sort of, hey, you're on track, or if your needs improvement, then that's so that's a bit of a stronger kind of conversation. That's typically a personal improvement plan, sorry. But if you're on track, then you sort of say, listen, you're on track, there's a few areas you need to improve, here's what I would focus on, yada yada yada, and then we get to the next point. So yes, there's one needs improvement. That's pretty much performance improvement plan straight away, but that's like a 6-month kind of process. And then the needs improvement is one as well. We work with the person to understand what's going on and why. It's not just deliberate action to not perform, right? Sometimes there are mitigating circumstances that we were not aware of, and we need to factor those in and see how we can support people. But again, we're also not a charity at the end of the day, and so we do need to help those individuals meet those expectations, and if unfortunately they can't, then it's time to go separate ways. And that's not always a bad thing, right? Sometimes the environment is not right for an individual, and sort of having ruinous empathy and dragging things out is not beneficial to the business or the individual ultimately.
So the only thing I want to do is to thank you very much for this time. So that was a very interesting and pleasant conversation for me, hopefully for you too. So for the folks out there, please subscribe to the channel. Here you will see, press the bell button, press the subscribe button, and leave a comment if you have any questions so that we can answer them later. Thanks a lot, Greg. Thank you for sharing your experience. Anything that you want to wish to our listeners?
Any wishes to our listeners of yours? Well, I mean, I hope it was useful and insightful for you. I always like to think that we're on a journey of continuous improvement. Learn from setbacks and learn from wins as well. But also, one of the huge things that I've learned over time is that huge leaps forward happen very rarely. It's so focused on marginal gains. So I wish you much success in improving by focusing on marginal gains and achieving your goals, professional or otherwise.
Thank you very much. Okay, folks, see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Vladimir. Bye-bye.